So, hello and welcome to our latest episode of the Kith Kin Podcast, Stories from the Hospitality Industry. I'm really happy to welcome Frances here today to tell us all about the ups and downs that have brought her to where she is today and what makes the hospitality industry so special. So, hi, thank you for coming and joining me on this conversation. So, can we just start with an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Okay, my name is Frances Gillespie and I am an HR consultant. I started my consultancy 12 years ago after another company takeover where I was head of HR and decided that I would go out on my own and have lots of hospitality clients instead of working for a company. And that's what I do. So I do HR for hospitality because that's my background and that's what I love. So I provide HR services across the spectrum, really, because I was a very generalist HR person when I was leading in the companies that I worked for. So it's problem solving. If you've got an issue, we'll sort it out. We'll take it off and make sure that everything is resolved to your satisfaction. We do all the legal stuff, contracts, handbooks, keep people compliant because thanks to the changes in all the government legislation coming through, everyone needs to kind of revisit their HR materials. And the big one recently is this change on sexual harassment, which kept me really busy writing policies and doing trainings and designing trainings. So that's it. Full HR, whatever. If it's involving your employees, we can help. The best thing I've done recently is design a full development career path for quite a large pub company. And that's for the supervisors to assistant managers to managers, and then a management academy. So I'm in the throes of it. It's quite an interesting one because it's very learning and development, which I think is so important.
Absolutely.
And busy times can get, put to the back. Maybe at Christmas, and I know this is the day where you never contact anybody in hospitality about HR things because everybody's running around doing all their Christmas parties. I've been there. I was a manager. That's it.
It's the bit that's really, really interesting because there's loads to get into here because actually, my experience as an operator, HR, when I first started, HR used to be something as an independent. I could just about keep on top of what I sort of understood the employment law. I could probably just about keep on top of it. But I mean, we're talking 30 years ago, but now it's so complex and it changes so regularly that actually this is something that it is important to outsource quite and to seek advice for regularly, isn't it?
Definitely. That I might get a telephone call. Someone will pass my number on to someone and they will just ring up and say, "Oh, I've got the situation. Can you help?" And yes, we can. And we resolve cases. And I think a lot of the time now, particularly for smaller, very small companies where they haven't got an HR lead, or for the independent owners who we've done quite a lot of support with, you don't want to get it wrong, because if you get it wrong, then it just adds to extra cost and hassle. Just earlier on, I was looking at my email signature, and it says, "Taking the hassle out of HR and leaving you to run your pub, bar, or restaurant." And that's what it says, because I think most operators, they just want to deal with getting bums and seats and great sales and great teams. So dealing with all the niggledy sides of when there's employment problems, like a grievance, for example, it really is time consuming. And
really stressful for an operator when they're trying to get on with the daily running of a business to then get sucked into this. And it's not because it is important and it's so easy to get wrong. And if you make a misstep, it could be so costly. And so it's very stressful. But what I really want to get into with you, because I know, obviously, we will come back to your HR because you're an absolute expert at it and do it really, really well for across the industry, and a specialist in hospitality as well, which I think is really important. But the reason why you're a specialist in hospitality is because your background is hospitality. So let's go right back to the beginning. Let's start from where you started and how your journey through the hospitality industry. So let's go to the beginning. Come on, tell us the story.
To be honest, if you want to go right back, this is really probably, I don't know if I can say this on record, but I started work in the golf club bar when I was 14 and a half in Ireland, just helping out, serving. My brother ran the bar. So it's always been there. And I moved on in my career. I actually had a career in arts education. I worked in the National Gallery in Dublin, came over to London on a career break where I worked at the Tate, but it wasn't enough money to live on. So I got a part-time job on the famous old Tattershall Castle, which is the big boat in the river.
Oh, lovely.
I think it's still there. Yeah. And it was just such good fun. And I realised that I'm on a career break. I'm leaving the Tate, the old Tate, and walking down towards the Tattershall Castle. And I'm thinking, I can't wait to get to work. And I just loved it. It was just great fun. And I realised, you know what? Why am I doing something all day that I don't love as much as what I'm doing in the evening? And so I took a full-time job there. One of the managers was leaving to run a pub, the old Slug and Lettuce. This is quite a while ago, obviously. He asked if I'd come and be his assistant manager. So I did. It was all very quick, no training whatsoever, in at the deep end. And then he wasn't well and took some time off. And I ended up running a pub literally with zero experience. But I loved it. And I had a call from the area manager who said, come out, I'm in the car. I can't find a parking space. This is in the middle of London. Yeah. And I come out in the car and he said, you're running this place at the moment as assistant manager. Would you like to be the manager? I was like, yes, please. So I became the general manager and did that for 3 or 4 years. Then the company was taken over.
I guess, sorry, I was just going to ask, I guess that because that's a London pub, that was quite a big pub, was it? I mean, it was...
No, to be honest, it was the Slug and Lettuce in Pimlico.
All right.
Which was it's a lovely old pub, and it was just on the corner in Pimlico. It wasn't a tiny pub, but it wasn't one of the kind of very massive, big posh pubs that you have now. I moved out of London and then ran a double floor restaurant and pub, which had a pub on the first floor and a restaurant in the ground floor, and then a restaurant in the basement. So that was a little bit more multifaceted and a great time. And it was there that then I got asked would I do the training for the company, and then did training, did HR, just then went back and did more exams and qualified in HR. So that was how I ended up moving into HR from hospitality.
But when you moved from the Tate to working in a pub, what was it that you loved so much? What was it that was bringing to you beyond what you got in your
social
day job?
Engagement. It's the people, isn't it? I think that's what everybody loves. You're not sitting at a desk. You're not sitting at a computer. You have to do some, nowadays with so many systems, there is that back office side of it, which I think people like a balance. But for the most part, you're meeting people. It's social. It's fun. It's just engaging. And I think there's a sense of job satisfaction. You know, at the end of a really, really busy, great shift, I think you just all go, "Way, that's brilliant." And you can kind of enjoy each other's company, the team camaraderie, all of that. That's, I think, why people love it. I think over the years, it's also become much more structured. In fact, here I am saying I'm designing a career pathway for people to become really, really good managers within the business. And of course, we all know that good managers are the linchpin of performance and making your pub or restaurant sing. And I think it's a career that is and has changed slightly from you have to work 100 hours a week. That has moved on. And I think that's why people will stay. A lot of people stay longer in the business if they have that work-life balance that they want all this time.
I literally say I was speaking at an event recently, and my notes were, I was talking about sort of when I first started in the industry, and I was sort of saying, you know, when we used to work 80-hour weeks, and I had to check myself, and I was going, yeah, are there 80 hours in a week? How did I work 80-hour weeks? And I thought, well, maybe it can't have been. It can't have been. But I know, regardless of whether it was or not, I know you definitely full time in this industry was 60 hours minimum. If you weren't prepared to work 60 hours, you weren't considered full time and you didn't get the job. And so that is, so yeah, I don't know how many hours it was, but it was definitely more than 60. And you just think these days, I mean, I know in the, you know, the years when I was employing people, we stopped in more recent years, we stopped getting people to sign the 48-hour opt-out because I knew I was never going to use it. Whereas before that, you know, the 48-hour opt-out, everyone had, you know, didn't have to sign it, obviously, because you didn't make people sign it, but you handed them the 48-hour opt-out. Now that doesn't, we just stopped doing it because we thought, well, they're never going to do more than, we're never going to ask them to do more than 40, and they'll never do more than 45.
Yeah. I think that the thing is that when you're not forcing people to work crazy hours, they will then be volunteering because they are in control of their own rotas. If they're the manager, they will. I know this week, if I looked on some clients, we do quite close to, we can see their rotas. If I went into a rota this week, I would say that there's quite a lot of people who are doing lots and lots of hours this week.
Yeah.
Of course, hourly paid people at this time of year as well, I think they will want to up their hours because the hours are there and they can earn quite a lot in these massive 2 weeks. And then they can have a little break between Christmas and New Year. So I do think people are very happy to work if they're more hours when they know that they're getting additional income and particularly when they need it. So
yes,
I think
yes, I say, but back
you
then,
have control.
Yeah, but back then you were salaried and then you're on, you know, 60 hours plus, and those extra 20 hours that you didn't get paid for them.
Anything.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah,
It's not right.
no, it's not. So good job it's all changed. At least good job for the employer. But actually, I think even for employers, I say not even for the employers, they are getting a more engaged, productive workforce. And as you say, people tend to stay in the industry longer because of that, because they're not burning out and just getting, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted your flow. So you are now, so you from managing, now you have moved into sort of the more HR side of things. Where did it go after that?
In HR, well, I was head of HR for the Sug and Lettuce originally. Went from training manager into HR manager, and then that got taken over by, I think it was SFI. And then I stayed there for a while and then took another role with a smaller company as HR director. And that was when I stayed there for a few years, and then I met Clive Watson and David Bruce, who had the Capital Pub Company, and I joined up with them. So that was I think in terms of the head of HR over a period of time, that was a fantastic period because we grew the company from like 10 pubs. They bought quite a lot of sites, some spirit pubs. They bought just lots. So we went from a handful up to 35 over a period of 5 to 6 years. It grew relatively organically and it was great. That was where we built a really good culture, really good team. And then Capital Pub Company got bought by Green King. And then I stayed to integrate the Capital Pubs with real pubs to create the Metropolitan division, which is still running very successfully to this day. And that was at the time when I decided, you know, I'm here working for Green King. That's great. But I think I need to go out on my own. And I did. I just made a decision to go. And obviously the people from Capital had started up city pubs. So I knew I had a good client straight away. So continued with city pubs, which was Clive Watson was chairman. And I worked for them as their lead consultant for the last 12 years. And they just got taken over by Young's. And so yeah, that was my career. And over that time, I built up just through referral, really. I mean, running your own business is very, very different to being in a company and driving a culture. You're out on your own. I have other HR subcontractors that I use when I get influx, because we could have a week where it's all swimming along really slowly. And then the next thing you've got, sadly, at this moment in time, and I really feel for some of the operators out there, because it is tough. Surviving for some people is the order of the day, and some people haven't survived. So I might get, look, we're closing our restaurant, and can you come and sort out the redundancies? And but we're selling this one, and can you do the transfer, all of that stuff? And I think that's really important for the teams, that you've got someone who knows what they're doing in there and knows how to treat them with respect and dignity. It's a process. It's not a great
absolutely.
process. Done well, I think, done with respect and order and good communication is what makes it feel okay.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to make someone redundant. It's not a pleasant thing. I guess the order of the day as well is that, there are plenty of other jobs for people to take and get into. Yeah, so HR as a consultant, you can do anything. You could have anything come on your table today, and it could be a big project or a small project. And I have built up a nice network of people who I've worked with before, mainly, who then will do some work for me even in their spare time. Some people are not working anymore for employers. They're just, they've taken time out to raise their families or their children, but they will pick up some HR work for me, which is great. It's not flexible.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, the thing is that, as I say, we touched on this a bit earlier, but with for hospitality industries, because what's really interesting in hospitality is we have, even a small business always has quite a lot of staff for the size of the business. So we always have this high need for the HR elements to be done. And as I say, when I first started, I used to sort of manage it myself. I don't know if I did manage, well, I probably had an employee, the statement of employment template, which I just filled in the gaps, and there you go, there it is. But, but the law changes in this area. It's sort of always sort of evolving, isn't it? And moving. And so to get it right, you do need to be careful to make sure you are doing it properly. And I guess so what I'm gathering from the way that you work is, obviously there's always the crisis, which is, that operator will know, right, I need to get someone in on this to make sure this gets done properly. But there's also all of the preventative work, isn't it? Which is the getting everything lined up and compliant in the first place.
Yes, I think so. Just being ready, having someone review your handbook. You're not going to want to do it yourself, because it's not exactly the most exciting thing to do. But once you know that your handbook is compliant, and the new laws that come out, there's a few laws that came in last year that also relate to the contract. I did quite a bit of work prior to October to make sure that anyone who was going on to an inland revenue trunk, the new trunk, tipping scheme, and if they were having an inland revenue trunk scheme, that their contracts were correct, because where a contract has been around for quite a while and the same thing is being used, it would have, for some people, what it was saying in the contract about the tips could have not been compliant with HMRC and could have cost them if there had been a problem. So that's the kind of thing that I'll go and root out to make sure that they're not going to get in trouble and prevent it. The other prevention aspect, I think, in terms of, let's go to the piece that people really fear most, is getting an early conciliation land on their table from ACAS because an employee is going to make a claim. That preventing that is through management training. So we run quite a few online in-person courses just to make sure that your manager doesn't need to know everything about employment law, but they need to know like 10 key things that if this happens, pick up the phone. Don't deal with it until you know exactly what you need to do, so that you can make sure your managers don't do the wrong step. That's a really good prevention. Having a really good training and development, and so the expectations of what is expected of someone coming in as a part-time bartender, if they know the rules and it's very clear and they're onboarding, then you don't get issues. So, but one of my favorite strap lines is nip it in the bud. And that's making sure managers know that, dare I say, from my dissertation when I did my studies halfway through my HR career, I did some really good research on hospitality managers and why they don't do the disciplinary procedure. And you can see how it is. Because hospitality is hospitable. It's a social, engaging place. So running around with your disciplinary invite just feels so alien.
I know, but we're all people pleasers, aren't we? We want people to be happy. Our job is to make people happy and to make it easy for them and to serve. And that goes for our staff as well. So it's setting those boundaries and knowing where and nipping it in the bud. We go, oh, it's all right this time. Yeah, it's tough.
I'm not really wanting to deal with that today. Because it's just, it's going to cause like a bit of conflict. But training managers on how to deal with it in a nice way, maybe not nice, but how to have a good, successful conversation about, please don't do that again. If you do, I might have a longer word.
And I was sort of thinking about, so HR all sits there as part of the compassionate leadership kind of model. In order to be a good leader and to manage well, you need to have all of this in place so that people do know what their expectations are, and that actually, but also enforcing all this stuff. As you say, it can be difficult to manage that conflict with one person, but actually if you don't, the impact that has on the overall team and the culture of your business, and it has such an impact. So actually the most compassionate thing to do for the individual but also for the team is to deal with it and to face it and to take that role. And I know when there's got plenty of stories. I mean, this is a thing also in hospitality, is we tend to employ younger people as well. So, there's thousands of people I employed. I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, must have been, 80% of them were under the age of 24, really. And so you're dealing with young adults as well. And I can come up with a handful of examples of where you've had to take somebody through a disciplinary procedure and ultimately to dismissal on some occasions, when I've really liked them. And I know that but I also know that this process that I'm taking them through too, which will end in dismissal, is actually part of their learning. And although it's tough and difficult, there is a little bit of satisfaction. You can do it compassionately and kindly, but it needs to be done, and it is the right thing to do. It's the right thing for your business, but it's also the right thing for that person.
Yes, definitely. And there are always times when some people have outgrown the job, but they potentially were great, but lose interest. Something happens, something changes.
Yes.
And then, particularly if it's a man, then if you've got someone who's not really behind it, like totally passionately engaged with it, then it hits your bottom line. It hits your sales. It hits everything.
Yeah.
And therefore, that conversation, that crucial conversation, needs to be had. Where is it? I'm not saying you just go in and have a conversation, time to move on. But I think managing and like a grown up, sometimes just having a really good conversation about where we're all at and what's the pathway for you to have job satisfaction again, and us have someone who's engaged in our business. So, those crucial conversations are, I think, critical when you've got a business and you need to make sure that it's firing on all cylinders, really. That's it. If you've got a break-even point, you've got to make sure the sales and so on are there.
And
Yeah.
as I say, and as an operator or as a manager, it's essential to have that the expert HR support with you, because it is not easy. I was going to say it's easy to make a mistake, but it actually is quite easy to make a mistake. If you get this wrong, it can end up being costly. But if you don't deal with it, it's costly as well. So it needs to be handled properly, and to have that advice and somebody to guide you through what the next steps are, or the steps that need to be put in place is essential.
Yes, and I think what happens sometimes, well, and this can be with anyone on the team, sometimes because it's hospitality, hospitable, it's been left, and then the next thing, it's like they want to go to the end procedure without
Yeah.
without anything, and we have to roll it back and talk a little bit more about where where we start this process, and that's the thing that can get confusing for people is, this person's terrible, but they were terrible 6 months ago, and
Yes.
we haven't
Yeah.
had a line in the sand. So a line in the
Yeah.
sand is a good thing. But I think we're talking about the problem issues. I think there's also all the positive sides of it, and that is making people have really good careers and
Right.
focusing on that development piece and having a system in place for managing people's development, growth, engagement. And I do help some companies with their process for that. I have to say, I've found, particularly in the last number of years, that this annual appraisal thing has really gone out the window, if
Yeah.
it ever was there in the
Yeah.
first place. Do you ever do appraisals when you were a manager?
This is the thing. So yes, you were sort of trained to, this is what you should do. You should have appraisals and whatever. And I know that when I had been an employee and had an appraisal, I really enjoyed it. But the problem was that it was sort of, once the years wasn't enough. So, but actually in my teams, by the end, you're doing it more on a sort of ad hoc kind of way. You sort of, when you've had, when somebody needs to, it's time to check in with somebody and to have those conversations. And also, I mean, I think it's what you are saying. We're talking, as certainly my management style was to, and this is what the joy is for, one of the joys for hospitality was for me, was you can tailor the job almost to the individual. So, but in order to do that, you need to know them, and you need to know what motivates them, and you need to know what their strengths are and their weaknesses are, and you need to know where they want to go to. Because so many times, as I say, you're employing young people, and they might come into the industry and have a career in the industry, or they might just be passing through. But you want that their time with you to have been valuable to them. So understanding that about them is really important. And then everyone gets the best out of it. Then you're creating people who are highly motivated in your job because they're getting more out of it. But in order to do that, and as I say, even as I'm describing the things you need to know, that's an appraisal. But you're just doing it as you go. And some people need more of those touch points than others.
I think that's hitting the nail on the head, really. I think it's not an annual appraisal is sometimes it's just for the sake of it, whereas having a 15-minute one-to-one with your team, with each of your team, every month or every couple of months or as required when you think you need to have a sit down with them. And I just think that is a tool to keep people engaged and get them interested in a career as well, and find out, do they want to move up the career pathway? What is it that can you keep them? I got this little thing called the meeting jigsaw. I'm not sure where I've got it. It might be on my LinkedIn page, and I think I still like it, and everyone I give it to likes it. I can give it to you, give it to anybody.
Lovely,
but
yes.
literally, it's a jigsaw it's like a guide for a one-to-one, that you're sitting down with somebody. What was good? Where are we now? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? 4 pieces and a little kind of plan for your conversation. Just think, because it's a tool to have that conversation, and people love having a bit of one-to-one with their manager. I had a fantastic person that I reported to at one time, and diligently was in the calendar, very senior person in the business, and diligently had that one-to-one would happen. It was never cancelled. And there was a power in that made me see that person who was, I think, the most fantastic people manager. And I think it worked for me, and I do think it works for most people.
Absolutely, because it's apart from anything else, it makes you feel valued, and feeling valued in what you're doing is really essential, isn't it? If you don't feel that you have any significance, then what is the point?
Yes, I think we all want to enjoy being at work. If you're in hospitality, you are no doubt enjoying hospitality, but also our teams need to feel valued, and this is one powerful way of doing that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I mean, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I mean, I could talk to you about HR for ages. I mean, which actually is really interesting, because everyone thinks HR's not that interesting, but it actually is fascinating, because, like I say, I think it's a really important piece of the, if you are going to lead in your organization and lead with compassion and actually create a team that's really highly engaged, that this bit's really important, isn't it? This HR thing. So if people want to get hold of you, how can they reach you?
They can look me up on LinkedIn, where I have quite a lot of material on my page and post relatively frequently. And you can just message me on LinkedIn or ask to connect and send me a LinkedIn message. That's a very quick way of getting in touch. Otherwise, you can go into our website, Frances Gillespie HR Consultancy, and the email address and the contact details are also on the website. That's it. It's that simple.
That is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Frances, and look forward to chatting to you again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It's been great.